from Larry on Instagram. After Jack Grealish scored his first Premier League goal since 2023 against Leicester in the week, do you think there's hope for Grealish to rescue his career from falling off a cliff?
It's harsh wording from Larry, isn't it? Very, very harsh wording.
Uh-huh.
There is
concern about
Grealish, though, isn't it? And it's not on new things, but probably at least a season old. This idea that everyone's kind of worried that we've seen the best of him, and this section of his career is perhaps going to pass him by. And I think he will leave City in the summer, but he'll be 30 in September. But I feel like he's got a flourish left in him. You know, I really, really do. Because partly because he hasn't played a huge amount, so you would imagine there's still some freshness there. And I think it's difficult to imagine him at any other club, really, isn't it, at this point? But that doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. Would it be entirely outrageous if Nottingham Forest get into the Champions League to take a little bit of a punt on Jack Grealish?
Wow.
Because he's won the Champions League. He's got a lot of experience. He would suit their style because of the kind of creative energy we know that he has. But he's also a much more disciplined player now from his time under Pep Guardiola. And I'm really fascinated in seeing what type of player he is post-Guardiola, if he's allowed to have that role that he had at Villa. Maybe Forest wouldn't be the best fit because you've got Morgan Gibbs-White in that role. Maybe he'd play a bit wider and it would work. I don't know. Of all the landing spots I look around, in the Premier League in particular, that's the one that kind of makes me go,
I don't think passionate Aston Villa fans like the idea of playing for Forest very much.
I'm not sure that the rivalry's that massive between them, though.
I think it is.
There's a frown there from Luke.
I think it's bigger than you're saying it is. I think it could be a factor. I wasn't expecting to come out there from nowhere with a Nottingham Forest shout.
I like that, though.
I like the big opinion.
Where do you think he's going to go?
Let's see what the YouTube community think of it, Jim. I don't know where he's going to go.
Is he going to go anywhere? I mean, he's contracted until 2027.
He is 2 more years in his deal. I agree with Jim that you didn't specifically say this, but I think what you're alluding to, I agree with, which is that he needs to move. I think that's certainly the case. And I think that there's a lot of things at play here. The comments he made after the treble win were interesting, weren't they? Where do you go from here, kind of thing. And he does seem like, I don't want to sound unfair to him, but he does seem like the kind of character who's a bit kind of emotionally led and a bit kind of, lets things get to him. He can be a streaky player. I think it's. I really want to choose my words carefully here, which is not something I usually do, because I don't want to feel like I'm criticising him, because I'm really not. But I think it's been understated, actually, how much he's lost his way. And I think the reason it's been understated is because the dialogue has been a lot around Pep Guardiola alongside the charges that Man City are facing, and he's become almost like
also their failings on the pitch as well.
He's become a subplot to all of that. I think if it was a season where they're all firing and they're all doing well, he's even further away from this team, probably, given his personal form, and I think he needs a move. I totally agree with Jim's point about the flourish in him. I think that you could definitely see him going somewhere else, a little bit less scrutiny on him, and really standing out. And
but I think with Grealish,
and almost getting like an England recall and it being quite a big story, right? I don't think there's much chance Forest is a landing spot for him, but I do think a team that's around that level, still probably in the Champions League, where he can play a lot and get back into his groove, I think would be absolutely ideal for him.
Who is that team, though? That's why I kind of struggled with this.
Is it in this country?
Possibly not, but possibly back at Villa.
I mean, Villa are the one that I looked at and thought, that's a club. I mean, learn from Rashford. But
if they don't sign Rashford, I think that becomes more likely.
But I mean, what would the transfer fee be for Grealish? And
I think City would kind of.
I'm not saying it's 100 million, but
all bets are off though, because you don't know what position they're going to be in.
Yeah, fine. But as you said, Jim, he's 30 this year. And I think with his style of play, that might lend itself to playing, maybe a few more years at the top compared to, your pace merchants and so on. Not that he lacks pace, but you know what I mean by that. So I don't know. I would. The problem is with a move abroad potentially. I mean, how many clubs are there realistically if you're talking about getting that level and that kind of money? Very, very few.
He'll have to take a pay cut.
Yeah, very few these days. Because to run his contract down, as you say, we're not talking about that. We're talking about potentially this summer. I think there is a chance, and I think there is hope that he gets going again. I wouldn't perhaps word it as rescue his career, but I understand why Larry's kind of said that. It's difficult to find somewhere after Manchester City.
Yeah.
The only thing you might say is this season, with them being not to their usual standards on the pitch under Guardiola, that maybe helps him slightly. Because as you say, look, if he's firing on all cylinders and so on, it seems like a huge step down to go from that. But I just look at the money situation. It's boring to say, and I just think, where on earth would he go?
Yeah,
and also it may well depend if Guardiola himself sticks around in the summer. People are saying, well, he's got an extra year in his contract. I understand that, but if Guardiola was to leave, depend who the manager would come in and say, actually, no, I quite fancy this guy. Or he might think, oh, he's a new lease of life. But that is quite speculative.
Also, his position is interesting, right? Because when he plays more centrally, he isn't. I mean, it's a small sample size because he hasn't played much this season. But I can definitely get on board. I can convince myself that the future of him post basically the 30, Jack Grealish in his 30s, is potentially a far more effective player through the middle.
Yeah, in a sort of a number 10.
Yeah, because he scores the goal against Leicester, who aren't great, of course, from that position. Yeah, he's played a couple of times through the middle for City this season.
England as well this season, and a while ago, but
I think. Given the way he likes to occupy space, given how technically good he is, given how because to me, and this is going to be unscientific, but I'm sure you guys know what I mean. If you're a wide player that drifts, and he does that a lot, he turns around, plays it inside, he drifts in and out of games. That's a real weakness, particularly when you're up against maybe someone like a Jeremy Doku, who's all action, super positive. When you play like that in the middle of the pitch, against, and England's a great example of this, and Man City is too when they're firing, against most of the time you're playing against teams that are worse than you, and you become almost not a luxury player, but someone who can be afforded to drift in and out. It actually can be a strength because you are... The defensive players don't really know where you are. Yeah. They find it hard to pick you up. You occupy those spaces between the lines, all that kind of stuff. Jack Grealish could, I've stressed could, be fucking brilliant at that.
I agree with you.
So potentially you repurpose him in that way. Can I just make one point before I hand over to you, Marcus? Because I want to make my point about the question itself.
Yes.
Do you think there's still hope for Grealish to rescue his career from falling off a cliff? I think it's way too early to say that's happening. Yeah. I think it's really, really, as Jim said, harsh way of wording the question. I think he's in a position where he's found it tough because he's not in the starting 11 of a very, very top team who themselves are having a lot of problems on and off the pitch. And I think a move for him would be a breath of fresh air. I'll be interested in what you think about the positioning point.
No, I agree with you. I mean, Carsley obviously put him in there when he was interim manager for England. Again, seems a while ago now, and it was against opposition that England should be beating, but it was still good to see him. And I think that one thing that we think about with Grealish and his career is we loved the way he played at Villa in particular, and we understand why he went to Manchester City, for crying out loud, and he's won pretty much the lot there. But at Manchester City, so often you would see him get possession and he would go up to the fullback and then just sort of check inside and recycle possession. And that's kind of what he's told to do. I understand, because again, with the side that you have, do you try and take him on, or do you check back and pass it to
You'll get
Rodri
it back in a minute anyway.
or De Bruyne, or like it makes sense for the style of football and the way they set up, and of course they won the treble. Although in that treble winning season it was a little bit more exciting from a Grealish perspective, or focus on him. So I would love to see that, Luke. I really would, and I think there's something in that. And it depends, the team, the manager, all that kind of stuff, because you could argue that he may well have to do a little bit less running. Busting a gut in that position. I know you're then into the realm of would he be a luxury player then, and everybody on the pitch nowadays in new systems and so on has to do a lot of running. But he learnt that in more the industry side of the game at Manchester City. There's no doubt about that. But I would like to see him let off the lead a bit more and be given that free role. But there's not many places he'd be able to do that.
Well, you say that, but because of his age and because of the situation where he's not in the team much, and also I think there's a lot of goodwill from Manchester City towards him, he might not command a massive transfer fee. And if he is willing to take a pay cut, which, let's be realistic, he'd have to be, he could be a really good opportunity for somebody. Wherever he lands, it's going to seem weird. But it might be a really, really good opportunity, as I say, for someone to get that sort of flourish out of him and actually get a really, really top level player that's still in there. I think actually he probably would suit Ange Postecoglou's Spurs quite a lot, but whether that will be a sentence that makes any sense in the summer is another thing.
No, I mean, that's never going to happen, is it? I mean, they've got Maddison in there.
Sure, yeah.
He's basically a shit Grealish when Grealish is at his best. But I wanted to make a final point about him as a person as well. But I think it's important to point out. We said yesterday on the show that he's a human being, and and sometimes everyone can kind of overlook that when it comes to footballers. But what I like about him particularly, because this relates to how he actually plays the game as well, is that he's quite a kind of obviously, as we all are, but quite obviously flawed human being. He's very real. Like he's got...
Speak for yourself, mate.
He's obviously got a lot of stuff going on. He's had hardships in his life. He's made mistakes.
He's always had people against him as well. I think that's a point.
Well, because people in this country don't, they naturally mistrust a kind of quote unquote fancy Dan type guy with the haircut.
I mean, you remember that? Was it a Birmingham City fan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, he got chinned by a Birmingham City fan.
On the pitch, like what that would do to you.
And some of the
he scored the winner that day.
Yeah, of course he did. So some of the comments he's received about his personal life and his family life and stuff from Birmingham City fans particularly has been fucking deplorable as well. My point was just that I wasn't actually going to go into all that, but the point I really wanted to make was just that when players come through this academy system these days, they can seem very identikit, very off the production line, very kind of all the edges rounded off from the age of about 19. And I'm not criticising those types of people because they committed to the football and that's what they're all about and good for them. But you don't find characters as much as Jack Grealish as much these days. And I think the sport is better off with him in it. So I hope he does find his way. I hope he does rescue whatever we perceive him to need to rescue. But I think we're still premature talking about the fact that his career's gone off a cliff. I don't think that's happened.
Yeah, I think you'd have to be a bit of a dickhead to not want...
He won the treble under 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, you'd have to be a fan of a particular club or a bit of a dickhead if you didn't want to see Jack Grealish.
Are we having a pop at Larry here?
No, I don't think we are, because Larry's given us a good talking point.
I will if you want me to.
No, don't, because we want to thank Larry for
It's always nice to have a Larry in there. They're a rare breed.
They are, actually. You don't see many Larrys these days, do you?
Yeah, exactly. Wasn't that long ago that Grealish was the darling of English football as well?
Yeah, he's an interesting profile of player, isn't he? Because he's like a 70s maverick, kind of rolled up with a 90s heartthrob.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, when he was dropped from the Euros squad in the summer, and I understand this season he's not been playing and doing much on the pitch, a number of the senior England players said to Gareth Southgate, hang on, what's going on here? We
they were gutted, weren't they?
They were, yeah. So I think that there's still a chance. I think there's a chance he could fight his way back into the England setup, of course, which is ultimately what we're all here for. All right, let's have a quick break. Jim Edward Campbell, or James Edward Campbell, to give your full name and proper name. You have the next question.
I do. It's from Toby. I only got his first name on Blue Sky. Following up on the Trent Alexander-Arnold chat last week, why do you think it is that clubs like Liverpool, in Trent's case, Chelsea in Eden Hazard's case, and Manchester United in Cristiano Ronaldo's case, have never seemed to be attractive enough to resist the pull of the two La Liga giants, Real Madrid and Barcelona?
Yeah.
Well, he's listed a few there. I mean, Portsmouth to Real Madrid in Last Diara's case as well.
Exactly, yeah. We've done deals with all the big
Robert
clubs.
Prosinecki as well would have played for both.
Yeah,
he never went from Portsmouth to Real Madrid.
No, he played for both.
Yeah.
That's not the point we're making, bruv.
Sure. Sold Mark Hateley directly to AC Milan as well.
Come on.
Portsmouth are massive.
Yeah,
they are massive.
Everywhere they go.
Yeah, they're massive.
Yeah.
Do you want me to answer this?
I'd love to.
I'll start off.
I'd love you to.
I think it's a selective question, by which I mean that there are lots of examples of big players who haven't taken the opportunity to play for either of those teams. You know, Steven Gerrard turned down Real Madrid twice.
Wayne Rooney.
Yeah, Francesco Totti turned down Real Madrid 3 times.
Patrick Vieira.
Roy Keane as well got an offer to deal, didn't he, towards the end of his Man United career?
Andrea Pirlo wanted to go, but he was told he couldn't by AC Milan, so he didn't end up going.
But what I'm saying is this is a selective list of players.
Yes.
But nonetheless, the truth contained within the question is, what is the reason that these clubs are so attractive? Look, I think there's a basic truism here. I think for English players, and there's going to be exceptions to this, so don't fucking at me. There's a general point to kick off. For English players, you'd say probably Man United and Liverpool the biggest teams. Ooh. The attractive teams to play for, the ones who are at the top. Yeah. For players from the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, wherever around there, it's Real Madrid and Barcelona. And for players in kind of more Central Europe, you'd say probably Bayern Munich and then a couple of the Italian teams.
Juventus used to be probably.
Yeah, that's going to be almost hardwired into you, being from those parts of the world, coming up as a young player. As it was with Cristiano Ronaldo. Massive part of it with Cristiano Ronaldo, and plus the fact that the white shirt would make him look like he's got a really nice suntan. Yeah. And match his teeth. But it is, the Cristiano Ronaldo thing, for him, in the position where he is, doing what he's doing is cementing himself as one of the world's best players at one of the world's biggest clubs in Manchester United, surrounded by other good players, winning things. He still thinks it's Real Madrid for me. And that has got to be because of his upbringing, because of his background, because of his own very strong sense of identity and all that kind of stuff. I think it's not a coincidence that the majority of these players that go and do this kind of stuff aren't English players. That said, you've got Bellingham, you're going to have soon Trent Alexander-Arnold. Beckham's another one.
I think that is changing as well as the world.
It's definitely changing as the world becomes more homogenous.
Well, Bellingham is a great example because Man City courted him as well. But I think there are other layers to this. If you've ever been to the Nou Camp or the Bernabeu, my goodness, I think when you approach those stadiums, it must have been what citizens of Rome would have felt when they approached the Colosseum. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there is something about the size and the prestige. Also, as well, they are the two biggest clubs in the land. Easily. I know Atletico Madrid have given them a right good going in recent seasons, but they are the absolute behemoths, really. And in England, as you say, you got Manchester United, there's Liverpool, there's also Arsenal, you got Manchester City, all these. There's a lot of big,
Chelsea.
Big, massive Chelsea, indeed.
Come on.
Well, in terms of trophies and
They
so
have
on.
a pull though, don't they?
They do. But in Spain, it's without a doubt those two, and what they mean, the history of it, and you've got the weight of all that kind of stuff. The fact it is one of the great rivalries. It's the most watched rivalry in the world, and again, I think it's that global appeal. There is nowhere bigger. Due to all those reasons, we know the reasons, and I think the size of the stadiums, the history, the tradition, and also if you go there, you will win trophies to either of them. I know Barcelona are in a bit of a financial, but they've still won trophies in the life. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, come on, let's not be silly.
I think it comes down to also we need to talk about the idea of the individuals in question, because I think for every person. Like, what would be another good example? Philip Coutinho would be a good example. It's not in the list here. Obviously doing great stuff at Liverpool, part of that kind of, that group of players who were going to do something special at Liverpool, and he decides to go to Barcelona for big money, for his own reasons. For every one of those, or for every one of Cristiano Ronaldo's or Aiden Hazard's, you are going to get a Paul Scholes or a Steven Gerrard.
But these are specific.
A Frank Lampard or a John Terry, who actually think, do you know what? I can't imagine myself, for example, really can't actually quite dull practical reasons, taking my kids out of a nice school or moving to another country or if you look at John Terry, for example, at his peak, he would have probably had his pick of the clubs he could have gone to.
If Harry Kane had won a trophy with Spurs, he'd probably stay there. Yeah. It's the reason why he's gone to Bayern Munich, because it's
exactly.
Well, we thought it was a guarantee to win trophies.
What I'm saying is, and this is not a dig at Toby, in every single case of a transfer when it comes to real life football, it isn't like clicking a button on Football Manager. There's real decisions at play here between people who've got actual families and all this kind of stuff. So it very much does boil down to the type of person you are. And some footballers are very comfortable living in an itinerant lifestyle where they can't ever buy a house because they're renting everywhere because they never put roots down anywhere. And some aren't. And it doesn't matter who they are. They don't want to go and do that. Roy Keane actually said he regrets not going to Real Madrid. But at the time, there was different domestic reasons.
It's easy to look back and say that because in the midst of it.
So these are human beings.
Your life would be entirely different, wouldn't it, if you make that?
Which is why I completely diverge from the Liverpool fans, not all of them, but the Liverpool fans who've decided, that Trent Alexander-Arnold shouldn't be going to Real Madrid. It's like, He's been at the club for a long time. He's won everything he could win. If he wants to challenge himself somewhere else, you may not like it, and it's your right to not like it, but he has an absolute right to challenge himself somewhere else.
What did you think of the posters that were put up around some of the?
You already know the answer to what I thought.
Well, there's a seed of doubt in my mind, so I do want to run it past you both. So some of the boarded up houses around Anfield, which is in itself its own story. Mate or traitor, take your pick, Trent.
Yeah.
Loyalty or lolly, Take your pick, Trent.
Great outing for the word lolly,
Yeah,
which you never
don't hear
hear
that very
referred to
often.
as football anymore, as money anymore.
It's a warm day. I'd love a lolly, but no, all bollocks aside, I think again, just it's the weight and the prestige. They are the big because again, you mentioned Italy. There, they've got some huge clubs. Of course, they do. I mean, AC Milan were one that when we growing up, they were the side. Yeah. They're not the side, and they weren't always like that as well. They came up. Juventus and Inter are the two big sides, and they've not fallen hard times, but Juventus, for their standards. Real Madrid and Barcelona will always be there. Will always be there. They are huge, and the colours as well. Just you would imagine. David Beckham said he couldn't wait to see himself in that all-white kit.
Like an angel.
He wanted England to play in the all-white kit when they played against Greece, I think, at Old Trafford, or one or two of the friendlies, because he loved it, and he was like, there's something about that.
Yeah, he's a Purcell boy through and through, isn't he?
Indeed he is, Jim.
That's Peter Crouch now, by the way. He's doing the adverts,
Is he? Good on him.
Yeah.
I think with Madrid in particular, what makes them unique, and I take your points about, players from certain areas having the particular giants in their region. I think with Madrid, actually more so, like far more than Barcelona, there's a sort
pomp and ceremony?
Well, no, there's a sort of an eternity about them, where they're never far from the Champions League. If you go to Madrid, you are guaranteed to be among the favourites for the Champions League every year. You're going to earn a lot of money. It's going to be comparable to the money you earn kind of anywhere else.
Madrid's a great city.
Madrid's a great city in terms of a European winter. The weather's pretty good. And if you're a player who cares about legacy, then it's the place to be, isn't it? Because, I mean, it makes legends like no other club does. It really, really is a sort of kind of pinnacle of it. And I do think because of that relationship they have with the Champions League, they offer something that nowhere else does. And I don't think Barcelona really do that either.
When you say legacy, though, that would be the only point I might actually
I mean,
disagree
there's
on
a
you
challenge for you when you get there, absolutely, because it's hard to maintain it, but you have to be there in the first place to manage it.
But that's the point people are saying why Trent should have stayed. It's why John Terry and Frank Lampard will always be with Chelsea. I think it's a bit of a nitpicky point.
But do you want a global legacy or a specific location legacy?
Yeah.
But I would say Gerrard and Lampard and Terry. I mean, that's a global legacy, you could argue. But okay, fine. But other than that point, I would kind of agree with you. But I also think as well, you talk about the climate. It's bright, it's colourful, there's a vibrancy there.
It's diverse as well. There's a lot of different places.
Can I make a slightly mischievous point as well?
Yes.
That might fall on deaf ears here and with our listeners, but I'll make it anyway. I would say also that if you are someone at a certain point of your career, it's actually easier as well.
Yes, well, I think that's absolutely right.
Because what Toby says is, why is it that these clubs in England have never seemed to be attractive enough to resist the pull? Now, part of it, I think, might be if you've done 10 years in the Premier League, you're probably redlining a lot. Your body's under a lot of pressure. The intensity of the Premier League is much harder than pretty much any other league. And you go to Real Madrid and Barcelona, or Barcelona, you can't go both. That wouldn't work. Real Madrid or Barcelona.
Unless you're Michael Laudrup.
It's been done.
Not at the same time.
Yeah.
The intensity is far lower. And I think you could probably think, if you're being clever about it, you could elongate your career as well. You could play for longer.
I think there's definitely a point there.
Guarantee domestic trophies over the length of your contract, don't you? Be an absolute disaster for either of those clubs to go, say, even 3 years without winning something. Do we think this is still true of Barcelona? I think Barcelona are slightly different. They operate in a really different way.
They're a couple of kicks away from a Champions League semi-final, Jim.
Sure, but I think because of La Masia...
Are you talking about generally in terms of the pool?
Generally, I just don't... because a lot of their stars come from within, right? And I think they're not necessarily a club where...
I mean, that's probably more of a recent thing with Barcelona. I mean, again, you have to remember there's phases to all this, history and so on. I mean, talk about Real Madrid in the Champions League. They went, 30 years or something without winning it? But that's ancient history now. They very much put that to bed. And then there was that they couldn't get past a certain round, and Mourinho got to semi-final.
La Decima became this obsession.
Indeed, but the fact is that they do it, and they're going to do it. They are inevitable. Barcelona, I think that there's the football purist angle at Barcelona. If you could make it at Barcelona, then you are a footballer's footballer, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
There's something about that. Real Madrid, it's about, like a player like Bellingham, he likes to talk to the referees, box office, it's a big name. It's almost like, there he is with the Hollywood A-listers. That's what Real Madrid is. Cristiano Ronaldo, that's what they want. The Galactico and all that pish, right? Whereas Barcelona, there's a different vibe. It's as equally as tantalising and enticing, I think. But it is for that kind of, you come here and you're stepping into the Johan Cruyff, the total football, now Pep Guardiola, all that kind of thing. We don't sit around and have our manicures and pedicures and have our hair combed for us and all that. We sit around and we get the salt and pepper out and we talk about football and we talk about the history, we talk about the tactics and all that kind of stuff. It's
we don't
rich.
check our bank account.
Do these still have a bank account? So
we pay the overdraft fees and then we get the salt and pepper out.
Yeah, and so I think Barcelona, again, we're talking generally and perhaps going over the top here, but that's the kind of thing. Because there was a time, wasn't there, when David Beckham was he going to go to Real Madrid or Barcelona? It seems ludicrous now looking back at that.
Yeah, the idea of Barcelona is crazy, isn't it?
And one of the presidential candidates who may well have ended up as the president said, if you get me as president, I will get David Beckham at this club. Again, David Beckham and Real Madrid, it's like, peaches and cream, for crying out loud. It goes together. So I think there's that. So you have, I think we've certainly answered Toby here, which is why I think that the Barcelona and Real Madrid will always be attractive. It would take something enormous for them to plummet so low.
It would take a long time as well.
Yes, indeed.
I mean, I suppose Barcelona are experimenting with that right now, and they still seem to be capable of pulling themselves back from the brink.
But we still talk about Manchester United were mentioned in the question.
Sure.
Manchester United is still a pool, because despite how ridiculous it's less of a pool, but again, they would be the closest thing, I think, in this country, or certainly maybe Liverpool as well. And also as well, just to very, very quickly say that Manchester City might not be a pull for one or two players, although as time goes on that's less, because they don't have the weight of history and so on. But I think that one might argue they've already put that to bed. All right, let's have a break and we'll answer more of your questions after. Luke Moore, you've got the next question.
What about this from Fortis Leo on our Discord, which is available exclusively to our Football Ramble Patreon subscribers, so patreon.com/Football Ramble to sign up to that. Assuming Kobbie Mainoo is off from Old Trafford, where should he go?
Real Madrid or Barcelona?
It's an interesting one, this, isn't it? Because Kobbie Mainoo's got 2 years left on his contract. There's apparently an option to extend. All the paper talk says that if Man United were going to sell him, they'd want 42 million, which seems fancifully low to me. An absolute bargain, to say the least.
His contract is so low. It's because his salary's so low.
Sure, but
he's earning 20 grand a week.
Yeah, but I'm sure that they still command a bigger transfer fee than that.
Well, the transfer fee is at least partly informed by the size of contract they've got to buy out.
Sure.
So that's part of it.
Well, whatever he would go for, the question is, where should he go? I mean,
I think the price informs that, though, doesn't it? Because it's going to inform who's available, who's going to be in for him. I think at that price, essentially every of the kind of top clubs in England will be interested. It's very interesting to me that Bayern have been mentioned quite heavily in the past few windows. I think actually, if that opportunity is real, he should jump at that chance. That would be the perfect environment for him to develop as a player. Also, you've got Kane, Dyer, and Musiala there, so you've kind of got that English influence around you to help settle in.
You did mention Eric Dyer there, didn't you?
I did mention Eric Dyer. Yeah, of course. And we can mention him twice if you want to.
I think he should definitely go abroad. I mean, it's worth pointing out he's in negotiations with United about a contract apparently, but he's on as I've said, he's on a low wage comparatively to other players at the club and the more broad football landscape. The reality of United at the moment is there's no guarantee he's going to be able to achieve anything in the near future there, right? And I know he's young, and so maybe he feels like he wants to stick around, he's got roots where he is and he's happy where he is, blah, blah, blah. But I think generally speaking, you don't tend to see all this paper talk if there's not something in it.
No.
And he is one of the hottest properties in English football at his age. And so there's something's going to happen. If United want to get a higher fee for him, they just need to offer him a better contract and convince him to sign it, first and foremost.
But money-wise, they might be interested in.
Until then, it's been a lot of talk that they need to move players on, right? I'd like to see him go to Dortmund or something like that. I think I get your point about Bayern Munich. I think Dortmund have got...
financially, I think that's a bit fanciful. I get why you're saying
it.
It's not, though,
is it? It's not.
When you factor the low wages in.
It's not fanciful at all. It's one of the few examples of a young player actually being available to a team like that, because he's not an established Premier League star that's going to be expected to have to take a massive pay cut in order to find a landing spot somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think it would happen because of the financial reasons. Because I think Dortmund, the highest they've ever paid for a player was 35 million euros, which was for Ousmane Dembele. And I suspect, as Jim does as well, that the fee Manchester United will sell him for will be higher than 42 million. That would be the only thing. But I think someone like Dortmund, I think, would be a really good move for him.
It'd work out brilliantly for him.
Well, it would. You talk about, you mentioned in the previous section about players, young players in particular, having so much football to play and so many games. Germany, it's a shorter season. One might argue it's slightly less intense than the Premier League as well.
We seem to be past the era of players being kind of reticent to move abroad as well, particularly young players as well.
I think that's absolutely right, because again, you look around the Premier League. And this is the problem with Manchester United and what they have at the moment, or some of the players the problem specifically for Manchester United players, where do you want to go? Well, Rashford is on loan. If he was to end up at Villa signing permanently, that's a blinder, because Aston Villa clearly, his Champions League, they're going for things. It's exciting, and they're a huge club, and decent sized stadium, all that kind of thing. But if you look around the league, like, is Kobbie Mainoo going to go to, say, Brighton? Probably not. No. Is he going to go to Fulham or Bournemouth? No, he's not. Newcastle United, with what Eddie Howe demands from his midfielders, I don't know if that would be a great
the
fit.
most recent credible reporting on it is that he wants to move abroad.
Yeah, right. and that's right. You start to look at the sides. Chelsea, he'll just get lost among the names there. Arsenal, I don't think would go for him. And he himself wants to play a more number 10 role. So, again, you look at the Premier League right now, and I think surely it's got to go. It's abroad.
I do wonder though if he is available for a decent price. Let's say he is, hypothetically. I think a lot of clubs would think this is a really, really good opportunity to get someone who's going to be a major player. So even if he doesn't quite fit exactly what Club X needs at the time, they might take a punt on him. And it's an interesting one from his point of view, isn't it? Because if Man United are going to be successful, it's very unlikely to be next season or the season after, isn't it? So he's 20 this month. So he's of the age profile where if this Manchester United rebuild is going to work, he might be around for the fruit that is born from that. But is there any evidence to suggest it's actually going to happen though?
It's a short career, and it's also not. We're not even in a place with United where you think, it's going to get better. You just still don't know.
Yeah.
You still just don't know that's going to get better. And so there's a reason that it's been seeded out there that he wants to move abroad. I mean, look, I take Marcus's points about transfer fees, and they are part of it. I mean, bear in mind, the start of the year, the first reports we were seeing was that United want 70 for Mainoo. And now they're saying, now it's been reported they want 40-ish, right? So there's clearly something going on there. I think for the position he's in and the age he is, Germany or Italy looks interesting.
PSG, something like that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he developed there though that well.
Well, I don't know. I think that Luis Enrique likes to play. I mean, it's always difficult to pin it on a manager because the manager might be off soon, that kind of thing. But I think you're right. I think to go abroad would be, it's what he reportedly wants. And I think again, to go from Manchester United to another Premier League club that isn't Man City or Liverpool, and I don't think he would go to either of those sides. It's, maybe with the exception of Arsenal, but I don't think he would, where he wants to play, Odegaard's got that position. I think, look, you just sort of think that's the problem with Manchester United with players exiting, as I said. You're leaving this enormous club. Where do you go realistically after that?
Which is why you can't consider Mainoo to be a similar situation, say Anthony.
No.
Because Anthony's wages are ridiculous,
that
Mainoo's aren't. So for all those European clubs on alert for someone like Mainoo, they should be looking to move forward with it because he's such an opportunity there. Because to be on 20 grand a week, he's played 10 times for England. He's still on 20 grand a week.
Yeah, he was very much part of the Euros.
Sure. So
to the final.
So there's an opportunity there, and I think it'd be best for everyone. Well, it wouldn't be best for Man United fans, obviously, but you never know what Jim Ratcliffe's going to do. But I think
best for Kobbie.
Definitely best for him to go abroad. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right, we're going to end with this question from Goshawk on Discord. With Cristiano Ronaldo being added to Fatal Fury, which footballer would you like to see added to which video / computer game franchise.
It's a computer game on this show, as Marcus insists upon.
So I think the idea of a general football beat 'em up, like the sort of Def Jam Fight for New York game,
Yeah, I remember that.
from the 2000s.
That had
which
Wu-Tang
was-
in it, didn't it?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
Loads of rappers in a fighting game, Marcus. I know you're not much of a gamer. I think that in football would be great, just generally be brilliant. And it's also worth reminding everyone that ice hockey has that in the real sport.
I used to play NHLPA Hockey 95
Right.
all the time as a kid, and you could get in proper fights on that. It was great.
Yeah, I
I'm
do remember
surprised.
that.
I'm surprised no one's thought of a beat 'em up football beat 'em up.
It would
game.
work really well, right?
Yeah, it would.
Maybe
Yeah, but
players wouldn't want to give the
rights,
license
image
in to
rights,
be beaten up.
come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would cost an absolute fortune, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Do it in Lego.
But now Chelsea don't have Jose Mourinho's naming rights and so on, you know.
You know what?
Yeah.
Maybe individual clubs will start doing it because
Yeah.
they're all sort of branching out into sort of like
Jim,
mobile phone contracts and
I
dating
could-
shows.
I could see that a Newcastle one where you got to beat the end of level baddies of Mike Ashley and Dennis Wise.
Dan Burn can do it. Dan Burn, you're picking Dan Burn every time there.
Yeah.
Again, you might not be aware of this kind of development in gaming, Marcus, but there are now quite a lot of simulators of things, like really banal things,
Yeah.
like farm
loves
simulator
them.
or like truck simulator.
I am aware.
Gary Neville simulator. Just wake up. You have to have an opinion about absolutely fucking everything.
There you go.
If anyone has a problem with it, you just double down and down and down and down. And on that noise, have you seen the mod of Doom where every image in it has been replaced with a picture of Tim Allen from Home Improvement, right? And every sound in it has been replaced with him going "Urgh," at a different pitch. It is amazing. You could do that with Neville and his orgasm sound.
Gary Neville does that noise when he's co-commentating that is completely unnecessary.
Carragher does it as well, and some of the finest moments of this generation of football have got those two spaffing all over
No,
it.
it's just for example, you could see like a really iconically bad tackle, which will get played over and over again in like compilations, and you will have over the top of it Neville going, "Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah." Why does he do that?
I think I don't mind it because it's a natural.
He follows me on Twitter, so I could ask him.
Oh,
I'm not on Twitter.
Why'd you make that noise?
Yeah, why'd you do that noise I could ask him that.
who else follows you on Twitter? Jim does.
Yeah, Jake Humphrey follows me on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I see.
Yeah,
You
which is
track-
that's an insult, really. It feels like
Yeah.
a dig in a way.
Well,
Gary Neville-
just take it as vindication of your world-class basics.
Gary
Or
Neville-
no, or he needs me to get world class basics.
Oh, maybe
and he's
that's
paying
it.
particular attention to me, coaching me.
I think he looked at you and thought, "There's a project."
Yeah, I don't think I could do a project with Jake Humphrey because if it involves getting up before 6 in the morning, I can't do it.
Yeah, and I need a comfy chair. I couldn't eat.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Well, we see. I mean, Jake Humphrey, Gary Neville, and Jim Campbell. It shows you the type of person you attract.
Dragon's Den.
There we go.
All I wrote down this, which person from the world of football would you like to see added to a video game franchise? I've literally written down 3 words, and they're Ange Postecoglou, Bowser.
Nice.
Nice. I've actually got a Mario Kart one as well, which there's a new one out, or about to be out. Obviously, it's in that particularly cartoonish Nintendo style, as you'd expect. I think a photorealistic Wayne Rooney, just as an
Yeah.
option, just looks like the real Wayne Rooney in his little Mario Kart cart.
He'd be Donkey Kong, wouldn't he? Come
I
on.
love Wazza. I don't know why, and I know it's going to get me in trouble for saying this a bit, but the fact that he got caught taking a slash in the street after a few beers,
So on the phone.
it's so relatable.
It's great. Yeah, it is.
Could I just, on the Mario Kart thing, can I just take this opportunity to insert into the show here one of my favourite tweets of all time? So I'll read it to you. If I was an Italian plumber whose girlfriend was constantly being imprisoned in castles by an evil fire-breathing lizard, I would simply not take part in recreational go-kart races with aforementioned lizard.
So good. Who put that out?
It's just a tweet
Was
from
it
a
Jake
guy
Humphrey?
It's a guy called Jamie. So hello to you, Jamie.
Good
way
old
back
Jamie.
in way back in the day.
From Discord, Eggs and Bacon said Super Neville Brothers.
Yeah.
This is something we could all get behind. Jimmy said Jamie Vardy as Sonic the Hedgehog.
Already looks like him.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Michael said I could see Jose Mourinho as some kind of end-of-level boss in Japanese RPG where you defeat him, but he only comes back in a more monstrous yet divine
Yeah,
form.
that's
see that.
perfectly absurd.
I thought to myself, a kind of Monkey Island vibe, but you're going round and you have to just basically do deals and chat to people in football. You know, at some point, Jamie Vardy comes out of a nightclub and you want to go in and see what's going on in the
a
nightclub.
lot of riddles in Monkey
A
Island.
bit more Leisure Suit Larry. I
Who's
think.
doing the
Yeah.
Who's doing the riddles? They'd all do crap riddles, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they would, but I think it would all be like footballer chants and stuff.
Pete talks at great length about how far he went to try and see a pair of pixelated women's breasts in Leisure Suit Larry. You could ask him about it next time he's back on the show. He's on holiday at the moment. So.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for that. No doubt in his own leisure suit. Thank you for listening to the Football Ramble Mailbag, part of the Acast Creator Network.
Also, I've got to tell you, Pete first ejaculated while playing the game Hero Quest as well as a teenager.
All three of us will be back on Monday to react to the weekend's football. I'm going to learn my lesson and not have any follow-up questions.
It's true.
Please do send us your responses, opinions, and questions for next week's episode. I'd imagine now you might have a few.
Any other games that Pete spunked while playing.
And subscribe on YouTube.
That'll be a long list.
Or wherever you get your podcasts. Have a lovely rest of the weekend.